My name is Ethan Walker. I am 23 years old and recently moved to a small apartment in downtown Chicago. After graduating from DePaul University with a degree in software engineering, I landed a job at a tech startup near West Loop. The hours are long, but I have always liked working late. The quiet hours of the night helped me focus, and with no one around to interrupt, I could code for hours. 3 weeks ago, I was assigned to a solo overnight shift. The company had taken on a high-profile client, and our team was racing against a brutal deadline. I volunteered to stay late. Everyone else left around 9. By 10:30, I was the only person left in the building. The office was on the 6th floor of a renovated warehouse. Dim industrial lighting flickered in the hallway, and the distant hum of servers was the only sound I could hear. At 11:17, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. The area code was from Illinois, but I did not recognize the number. The message read, "Do not stay past midnight." I stared at the screen for a few seconds. I assumed it was a joke from someone on the team. We had a group chat and often played harmless pranks on each other. I typed back, "Who is this?" The message failed to deliver. I tried again, same result. I sent a quick text to my friend Riley to check if my messages were working. They were. I laughed it off and went back to work. At 11:42, another text came. "They will be watching from the walls." The air in the room shifted. It felt heavy and damp, like the pressure before a thunderstorm. I stood up and looked around. The office was long and narrow, rows of desks divided by tall glass partitions. I saw nothing unusual. Still, I could not shake the feeling that I was being observed. I decided to leave a little before midnight, just to be safe. I packed my laptop, shut off my monitor, and turned off the desk lamp. As I approached the elevator, the hallway light above me blinked and went out. I pressed the button. The elevator did not come. I waited. A full minute passed. Nothing. I walked to the stairwell and opened the door. A sudden gust of cold air rushed past me. That was impossible. There were no open windows in the stairwell. It was sealed off from the outside. I descended the stairs quickly. My footsteps echoed, but with a strange rhythm, like there was a second pair of footsteps one beat behind mine. I reached the lobby and froze. The front doors were wide open. The security guard who always sat at the desk was gone. His chair was pushed far back, and his coffee mug was shattered on the floor. There was no sign of struggle, just a sense of something very wrong. I ran outside. The streets were empty. Not just quiet, but completely deserted. No cars, no lights in the windows, no sound. Chicago is never silent. But that night it was. I got in my car and drove home. I locked the doors, turned on every light, and stayed awake until sunrise. No more texts came, but I knew something was wrong. Something had seen me, and it did not want me to leave. I did not tell anyone about that night. Not my coworkers, not Riley, not even my landlord who asked why I looked like I had seen a ghost. I convinced myself. It was sleep deprivation, stress, maybe a cruel prank by someone in the building. Still, I avoided staying late for the next few days, but the texts did not stop. They never came during the day, only after dark, always from a different number, but always the same tone. Warning, watching, waiting. On the 4th night, at exactly 11:13, I received another message. "He is in the static." This one made no sense. I was lying on my couch, half asleep, television on mute. I looked up. The screen flickered, just once. A blink, like someone had changed the channel for half a second, then back. I stood up and walked to the screen. My reflection stared back at me, distorted by the glow. I turned off the TV. At that moment, every light in my apartment dimmed, not fully off, just enough to feel wrong. My phone buzzed again. "Do not look at him." The temperature dropped. I could see my breath. I grabbed the remote and turned the TV back on. The screen lit up in static. At first, There was nothing in the noise, just gray and black and white speckles. But then I saw a shape, a silhouette. It stood in the center of the screen, unmoving. No features, just a dark figure inside the snow. I blinked. The shape grew taller. I dropped the remote and backed away. The static grew louder. Even with the volume at 0, I could hear it, like it was inside my head. My ears rang. My hands shook. Another message: he knows you now. The lights went out. Total darkness. Then came the knock. 3 short raps on the front door. I stood frozen, heart in my throat. My building has a security system. No one can enter without a code or key. I walked to the door as quietly as I could, pressed my eye to the PEEPHOLE. Nothing. The hallway was empty. I opened the door a crack, just enough to see outside. The hallway lights were off. At the far end, by the elevator, I saw movement. A figure, tall, still facing me. No features. No sound. Just watching. I slammed the door shut and locked it. I turned every light on again. They flickered, but stayed. I did not sleep. At dawn, I finally passed out on the couch. When I woke, the TV was still on. The static was gone, but the shape had left a smudge on the screen. 2 handprints. I spent the day pacing. I had work emails piling up and a grocery list that had been on my fridge for a week. I ignored them all. My phone was off. I could not stand the idea of another message. The handprints on the screen had vanished by morning, but I knew what I saw. At 7 that evening, I made a decision. I could not sit and wait anymore. I had to know what was happening. I needed answers. I grabbed my keys, a flashlight, and drove back to the office. I told myself I would look around, maybe check the security cameras. Something rational, something real. The building was locked, but I still had my access card. I entered through the side door, past the empty reception desk, and took the elevator to the 6th floor. The hallway was dark. My keycard should have turned the lights on automatically, but nothing happened. I used my flashlight. Everything looked the same. Desks in neat rows, coffee cups still half full. My workstation was untouched. But as I moved toward the back of the office, I saw something that had never been there before. A door. It was between the server room and the break area, where I was sure there had been nothing but a wall. The door was old, wooden, and painted a dull gray. It had a rusted handle, and no window. It did not belong. I reached out and touched the knob. It was freezing. I turned it. The door opened with a sound like a sigh. A narrow staircase led down into darkness. This made no sense. The building only had 6 floors. There was no sub-basement listed on the blueprints. I had seen them when I first started. I descended. The steps were steep and uneven. The air grew colder with every step. My flashlight flickered but stayed on. After what felt like 10 minutes, I reached a hallway. It was made of stone, not concrete, not brick. Stone, rough and ancient. I heard something, not footsteps, not voices, breathing, ragged and close. I turned the light toward the sound. The beam landed on a figure hunched in the corner. I froze. The figure was wrapped in a gray cloak, its face hidden. It rocked slowly, whispering something I could not understand. I stepped back. My foot struck something metal, a bell. It rang loudly, once. The figure stopped moving. It turned. There was no face, just a black void beneath the hood. I ran. The staircase twisted behind me, longer than it should have been. I climbed and climbed. My legs burned. I did not look back. When I burst through the wooden door, I slammed it shut and dragged a filing cabinet in front of it. My hands were shaking. My flashlight was dead. I checked the wall. The door was gone. I left the office that night and never went back. I emailed my boss the next morning and told him I had the flu. I needed time to figure out if I was losing my mind or if something was really following me. I moved all the mirrors out of my apartment. It started when I walked into the bathroom the next night. I flipped on the light and caught a glimpse of something in the mirror. Not me, not exactly. My reflection was slower, delayed by a half second. It moved when I did, but not right away. Like it was watching before, it decided to mimic me. I stared at it for a long time. Raised my hand. It followed. Tilted my head. Same, but the eyes were wrong. My reflection's eyes were darker, like the pupils had spread, swallowing all the white. I stepped back. It smiled. I did not. I dropped the mirror in the alley dumpster that night, smashed it first with a hammer, just to be sure. But that did not stop the messages. At 2:30 in the morning, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing. I had turned it off, or at least I thought I had. The screen was lit. A new text waited. The reflection is not UI through the phone against the wall. The screen cracked, but the message remained, glowing. Another one came a minute later. Do not speak to IT. Stood in the middle of my living room, holding my breath. Every light in the apartment was on. I had sealed the windows, covered the vents, but I still felt watched. I turned toward the hallway and froze. There was a mirror hanging at the end of it. I had thrown them all out. I knew I had. This one was old, oval-shaped. The frame was black and silver, tarnished with age. I stepped forward slowly, each step colder than the last. The air was thick. When I reached it, I could not see my reflection. The glass was black dot then, like frost melting on glass. A face began to form. It was mine, but wrong. The eyes were bottomless. The smile was wide and slow. It tilted its head and stared back at me with hunger. My phone buzzed again. I turned and sprinted back into the living room. I slammed the door shut behind me. There was no sound, no footsteps. But when I turned around, the mirror was gone. Only the outline remained on the wall. A perfect oval, burned into the paint. I packed a bag that night. I needed to leave. But as I reached for the doorknob, I heard something faint. A whispered dot from inside the walls. It said my name. I checked into a motel on the edge of town. A rundown place near Cicero Avenue with flickering signs and a half-empty parking lot. The kind of place people disappear from and no one asks questions. That was what I needed. I paid in cash, no ID, no name. I used gloves when I signed the receipt. I was not just scared. I was paranoid. The room was cold and smelled like mold and cigarette ash. The wallpaper peeled in strips and the sheets were damp. I checked the vents first, every corner, every mirror. I taped black construction paper over anything reflective. I stuffed towels under the doors and against the window frame. For a few hours, I felt safe. Not safe exactly, just hidden. I stayed awake until 3:30 before exhaustion won. I had not slept in 2 days. I do not remember closing my eyes. Just the crushing weight of sleep dragging me down. I woke up gasping. Something was crawling through the vent above. The bed dot, it was slow, deliberate. The metal creaked with its weight. I jumped out of bed and grabbed the lamp, yanking it from the wall. The vent cover rattled. I stepped back. A single eye stared out from the darkness. It blinked. I dropped the lamp. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely unlock the door. I ran outside barefoot, shirtless, freezing in the night air. The parking lot was empty. I turned around. My motel room window was open. I had locked it. I was sure I had. But now it hung crookedly, the blinds swaying gently as if something had just passed through. My phone buzzed from inside the room. I left it there. I did not go back. Instead, I walked miles until my feet bled and my vision blurred. I found a diner near Oak Lawn that opened early. The waitress gave me a look when I walked in, but she did not say anything. I ordered coffee. I did not drink. The bathroom had no mirrors, just a small window above the sink. I sat in the corner and waited for sunrise. At 6:11, the sun rose. I thought maybe that would make things better. That daylight would burn away the shadows. But when I stepped outside, the shadows did not leave. They followed me, stretching just a little too far, bending in ways they should not bend, and every time I blinked, they moved closer. I did not go home. I could not. Whatever had found me in that office had slipped into the world outside, and now it walked where I walked. I took a bus south, paid in cash, kept my hood low. I did not speak to anyone. I rode until the driver kicked me off in a town I had never heard of, St. Clair, Illinois. Population maybe 3,000. It looked forgotten. Empty storefronts, cracked sidewalks, houses with boarded windows. Perfect. The woman who ran the boarding house was old and blind in one eye. She gave me a room in the attic for $20 a night, cash only, no questions. That night, I lay on the floor with my back to the wall, staring at the door. I did not sleep. I walked the streets the next morning, hoping to lose myself in a town that seemed half dead. But there was something wrong. No one made eye contact. No one spoke. Every house had thick curtains drawn shut. Dogs barked and stopped all at once. And the clocks in every store window were stuck at the same time. 12:17. I passed a school. The windows were dark, but I heard children laughing. That night, I heard scratching from inside the walls. Not rats, not pipes. Scratching in patterns, like fingers tapping a message. I tried to ignore it. I wrapped a blanket around my head and turned on the small radio I had found in the room. It only picked up one station, a woman whispering numbers, over and over. No music, no breaks, just her voice, calm and steady, counting up to 17, then starting again. I unplugged the radio. The voice did not stop. It grew louder. I smashed the radio. The pieces twitched on the floor. Outside the window, the streets were full. Figures, dozens of them, standing still, all facing my window. They did not move. Not even when I turned off the lights. Not even when I closed my eyes. The whispering continued, inside the walls, inside my head. At midnight, someone knocked on the door once, twice, 17 times. I did not answer, but the door opened anyway. The door creaked open, like it had not been touched in decades. Cold air spilled into the attic, and with it came the sound of the whispering. Clearer now, closer. The same numbers over and over, climbing to 17, then starting again. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at the open door, but no one stood there, not yet. I crawled backward until my spine hit the far wall. I held my breath. The air smelled like damp earth and something metallic, sharp, like blood. The stairs creaked, once, twice. Something was coming up. I gripped the edge of the radiator and waited. There was no weapon in the room, no way out but the window, and it was nailed shut. Then I saw it. A hand, pale, thin, fingers too long. It gripped the edge of the doorframe and pulled the rest of it into view. It wore my face, but the eyes were wrong, hollow, black and sunken, like they had seen too much and wanted me to see it too. It did not speak. It moved with jerks, like a puppet, dragged by invisible strings. It stepped into the attic and shut the door behind it. Then it pointed at me. The whispering in my head stopped. I do not remember screaming. I do not remember moving. But I woke up in the woods outside town. My clothes were torn. My arms were covered in scratches. My hands were bleeding. The sky was still dark, but I could hear birds chirping. I checked my phone. It was 12:17 there. Was a single new message on the screen. You let it. Eni sat there until the sun came up. Then I walked. I did not go back for my things. I did not speak to anyone. I followed the train tracks out of St. Clair until the trees swallowed the town behind me. But I could still hear the knocking. Even in the wind. 17 times, always 17. The forest was quiet, not peaceful, just waiting. I kept walking, step after step, through underbrush and shadows. I followed the tracks until they vanished beneath rust and rot. I did not know where I was. That was the point. I passed an abandoned station. The sign said East Bramble, a ghost town. Nothing moved. I found an old church near the edge of a shallow ravine and climbed inside through a shattered stained glass window. The altar was gone. The pews were broken, but it was shelter. That night, I dreamed of the thing in the attic. My face, my voice. It stood over me as I slept, one hand resting on my chest, the other digging into my skull. When I woke, my nose was bleeding. Carved into the wall above me were the words, "It wants more than we found a rusted mirror in the church basement." I smashed it. Behind it was a crawl space. I should have walked away, but I went in. I had to know. I had to see. The space was tight, barely wide enough to drag myself through. Cobwebs clung to my face. The air grew colder. At the end was a room. Stone floor, no light, and something else. A chair, wooden, bound in rope. Scratches on the arms, blood on the floor, and bones. So many bones in the corner. A pile of objects. Personal things. A child's shoe. A pair of broken glasses. A wallet. My wallet. I had lost it weeks ago. It had been taken from my apartment, but here it was. Something was collecting pieces of me. I left that church and did not stop walking until I reached the highway. I tried to hitch a ride. No one stopped until a van pulled over just after dusk. No markings. Windows blacked out. The driver never spoke. I got in. The road stretched on and on. Every turn looked the same. I tried to check my phone, but the screen stayed black. When the van stopped, we were in front of a motel. Different than before, but familiar. The sign flickered. The parking lot was empty. The door to room 17 was open, and inside, the lights were already on. I stepped inside room 17. The smell hit me first. Damp carpet, old smoke, and something underneath. Coppery, like something once alive, had died long ago and been left to rot. The door closed behind me on its own. The television was on, but there was no image, just static, not white noise, a low humming pulse, like something breathing behind the screen. The walls were covered in photographs, hundreds of them, all black and white, all of me sleeping, eating, talking, walking, photos I had never seen, photos I had never posed for, some from angles that made no sense, overhead, beneath floorboards, behind mirrors. I looked closer. My expression was the same in every shot. Vacant eyes wide, mouth slightly open, like I was already dead. There were 17 chairs in the room. 17 clocks, all frozen at 12:17. 17 red handprints on the ceiling. I turned to leave, but the door was gone, just wallpaper now. A floral pattern that swirled when I stared too long. Moving shapes behind it, pressing forward, watching me. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice. A voice came through the static. Not words. A sound like teeth grinding in rhythm. A pattern. 17 notes. Then silence. The television turned off. In its reflection, I saw them, lined up behind me. 17 figures. All with my face. All whispering in perfect unison. "You are the last." I turned, but the room was empty. The photographs were gone. The furniture was gone. Just a mirror now. One single mirror where the TV had been. But the reflection did not match my movements. My reflection stared back, smiling, and then it reached forward. The glass cracked. I ran for the wall, pounding where the door had been. The wallpaper bled beneath my fists. Behind me, the mirror shattered. Something stepped out. It did not speak. It did not have to, because I already knew its name, and it was mine. It stepped out of the mirror, like it had always belonged. Same face, same hands, but where my eyes reflected fear, its eyes were hollow with hunger. I did not move. I could not. My body was ice. My lungs would not fill. I watched it walk toward me, step by step, a reflection no longer bound to glass. It touched my chest with one finger, cold, burning cold. I felt my heartbeat skip. You invited me's voice echoed inside my skull. Not sound, just understanding. Like a memory I never made. You ran but carried me with woo. Stumbled back. My hand found the cracked corner of a broken chair. Wood splintered in my grip. You looked high-struck. The wood connected with its face. The thing staggered, not from pain, from surprise. I ran. I did not look back. The wallpaper peeled away in strips as I threw myself against the wall. It broke open like rotted paper. Behind it was the hallway, endless. No lights, no windows. I ran through it for what felt like hours. The voices followed, not just mine, others, dozens, hundreds, begging, warning, screaming, then silence. The hallway ended at a metal door, rusted, number 17, carved deep into the center. I opened it. Inside was darkness, but I stepped through. Light blazed, a single spotlight. I stood in a room of mirrors. Each showed me something different. In one, I never left the office that night. In another, I was already dead. In another, I was the thing I turned. Behind me stood all 17 of them, each a version of me, twisted by choices I did not make. They did not move, but they watched. A screen lowered from the ceiling. Static filled the room. A countdown began. 17 seconds. 16:15. The lights dimmed. The air tightened. 12:11. I tried to wake up. I tried to scream. 7:6. They stepped forward. 3, 2, 1. Darkness. I woke up in my apartment. Sunlight through the blinds. The television off. No messages. No blood. My heart pounded in my chest. I checked the clock. 12:16. The second hand ticked. I stared at it, waiting. It ticked again. 12:17. A knock at the door. Once, twice. I did not breathe. The knock came again 17 times.